Hi everyone. Today we've got a special guest. We're joined by Alex Seal from Let's Go Zero. Hi Alex.
Hi, Paul.
Do you want to just introduce your role and kind of what you do in the organization?
Yes, absolutely. My role is climate action specialist. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what that means, to be honest with you. But essentially, my role is to look at what best practice is out there for schools in terms of taking climate action, and then trying to share that as widely as possible, not only externally, but with my team of climate action advisors who are talking to schools and colleges and nurseries every day about how they can progress some of their plans in that space.
So just to give a bit of context, like what were you doing before this role? How have you got to where you are? What's your experience?
Well, much like you, Paul, my background was in geography teaching. I started off as a geography teacher many years ago now, and yeah, just worked my way through that pathway that you'd expect to head of department and school leadership, and everything in between. And really enjoyed that, obviously, and got a lot of value from working in British schools. But a couple of years ago, decided to change path and move across into this. There's obviously a lot of crossover with the work we do with schools, but yeah, that was my background really is just state school teaching.
Okay, cool. Um, yeah, I guess there's a lot of geography teachers who are off doing these sorts of things because I know like Kit Marie is obviously another one as well with a background in so that's another person actually that we've done an Ask an Expert with. So before we go any further as well, we should probably kind of really clearly outline what then is Let's Go Zero trying to achieve, what's the aims, what's the vision, and then maybe we can talk a bit more about the team and everyone afterwards. But yeah.
Yeah, Let's Go Zero is a campaign essentially, or that's what it was born out of. So the student climate strikes of 2018, 2019, when Greta Thunberg really came to the fore. Um, I think at that time, and I wasn't with the organisation at that point, but that was an indication to Ashton, who are the Climate Solutions charity of which we're part of. That was an indication to them that there was real appetite from young people to do something about this, and schools were the obvious place that we could have impact. So the Let's Go Zero campaign was born initially as a voice representing those young people in those schools to policymakers, to government, that there's an appetite out there for action to take place. And we've now got almost 8,000 schools signed up to that campaign. So that's fantastic. That's still a core part of what we're doing
Mm.
in policy and that type of thing. But over time, our offer has diversified. We've taken on different projects and different programs. Um, and that includes the work that I'm doing now. But at its core, it is a campaign.
Hmm.
So one thing I would ask anyone watching this today who is not signed up to the campaign is please go and sign up because you would be adding your voice to the many others who are asking for more support financially, policy wise, and everything in between to help do this work in schools.
Yeah, and we'll make sure we add that description, the link in the description. But it's this idea that there's lobbying happening in the background to say to the government, look, we need to prioritize, say things like retrofitting of buildings, support for moving towards renewable sources of energy. There's that broad spectrum of essentially, yeah, reaching net zero. Uh,
Exactly so, exactly as you've just described. It's everything from yeah, financial support for that actual retrofit work, policy change so that schools can take on variety of different financial packages to help them get there. Because at the moment that is quite restricted for schools in terms of loans, etc. So we're doing work in the finance space to try and explore solutions there. Looking for the inclusion of a climate action plan and a sustainability lead within their sustainability strategy, which we
mhm.
fed into. And yeah, and also cooperating, of course, with the DfE and government on actually providing that support to the schools. So it's quite broad in that respect.
Yeah. And I guess so you've mentioned climate action plans. I guess that's the big focus at the moment as well. Do you want to talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. There is it's not mandated at present. I must start with that, but
Mm.
it's certainly moving in that direction. But we see the benefits of a climate action plan as so holistic to a school's operations. Of course, it's the environmental focus. It's about asking schools, nurseries, colleges to have a document, to have a strategy, to have a plan in place that addresses four different elements of what would be considered best practice in sustainability. So that the first one is decarbonisation. So what can the school itself do to reduce its own carbon emissions? Now, the obvious place to start there is energy. Looking at your energy use, trying to reduce that. Of course, that has huge benefits in terms of potential financial savings.
Mm.
We've got schools that are having solar installed. We know that that's a real boon to them in terms of their long-term savings. It's also a great message to the children about the
Mm.
direction of travel that the school wants to take. So that's one side of it, but it can also be things like a switch off campaign and just reminding everybody in the school that when you're not using
Yeah.
something, turn it off.
Hmm.
And you can really have the students take the lead on that. So you've got your decarbonisation part of that climate action plan. That also includes things like how people travel to school, the food that's being eaten in the school canteen, what you're buying, your procurement, that takes
Hmm.
up quite a large percentage of a school's carbon footprint. So any action there is really to be encouraged. The second part of a climate action plan would be the adaptation and resilience pillar. We know, unfortunately, that some impacts of climate change are here and are coming, and we have to adapt to those.
Mm.
About 50% of schools in the UK are at risk of flooding. And so, what can we do in our school estate to mitigate and adapt to those impacts?
Hmm.
The other one, of course, the big one for schools is overheating. We hear every year of classrooms reaching unbearably hot temperatures. That's only sadly going to become more commonplace.
Mm.
What can we do to adapt those classrooms so that learning isn't affected and children can enjoy their time in school? So that's the second pillar. The third is about biodiversity. So, how can we use the school grounds to create more species-rich habitats? How can we encourage wildflower meadows or areas that are left fallow so that species can proliferate? So, that's the biodiversity aspect of that, and maybe measuring that and seeing if we can see some positive steps in that direction. And then the last one is about the climate education, green skills and careers, which I know the
Mm.
Ministry of Eco Education does fantastic work in. And it's about how can we weave sustainability into the curriculum, which I know you've got a real expert eye on, but also how can we create that green skills pipeline for young people going into the world of work, where every job is going to be, forgive the cliche, a green job.
Yeah.
And how can we really make sure schools are addressing that in their own provision? So sounds quite a lot.
Yeah.
It is, I guess. But what we try and do is we try and break that down into a yearly plan that targets maybe just a few priorities at a time
Mm.
in a way that we're going on a journey with this. We're not going to go from 0 to 60
Yeah.
overnight. And that's kind of what the plan is there to do.
Yeah, so it's sort of manageable. That sounds a really good overview. And I mean, the thing that's exciting about climate action plans is that breadth. So those four spheres really cover pretty much everything. And that if schools can kind of start that journey, they're well on their way. I think one of the analogies I always think is that schools used to have travel plans, school travel plans.
Mhm.
Is this, could it be thought, just in terms of school teachers to kind of understand what this sort of document is? It's a sort of a hybrid of a like a development plan for the school, but also it's that kind of like within people's thinking around travel plans, it's that idea that you're creating some sort of framework policy that then helps to give direction and move things and make things happen. Is that kind of a good way to think of it?
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's designed to be similar to documents that teachers might already be familiar with, like a school development plan
Mm.
or a travel plan. What you want to really do is think about, well, who's going to really take the action in the school setting? It can't fall on the shoulders of one person,
Yeah.
and that's never going to work. So you need your team around you. You need to get those people talking around a table. Ideally, you want a governor that is linked to this as well, so that this can become a regular agenda
Yeah.
on governor's meeting. And you need to involve the young people, because they're going to give the energy and the enthusiasm to get a lot of this going.
Mm.
You can get that core team together. You can then assign responsibilities, and it's very much a working plan. You'll update it termly, half termly. Some things will stall. That's fine. Some things you'll have real traction with. Brilliant. Lean into that
Mm.
and get that moving. And that's absolutely fine. It's meant to be adaptable and flexible in that way. But yes, exactly as you've just said, Paul, it is meant to kind of resemble documents that teachers are already familiar with, in a way that helps then allocate resource and time most effectively.
Mm. Yeah, and just sort of trying to go back just to that it's key stakeholders, and so these are people that maybe, and we'll come to the climate action advisors in a minute, but people who,
Mm.
when Let's Go Zero coming into a school, that you might be meeting. So you're saying governor's an important one, and I guess we're alluding to the idea of some sort of senior leadership, a head teacher or someone who's kind of setting the tone from the top. You've said like young people and involving them, which I think some people might think of as like an eco group or a school council or something, but some sort of representation and student voice. But who else are kind of the key stakeholders that you might be connecting with in a school?
The business manager or the whoever holds the purse strings,
Yep.
because some of this costs money, and if we can give a little bit of help in that direction, we can be more ambitious with what we can achieve. But of course, the long-term savings of any kind of energy action is going to be paid back. So we need to have that conversation, think long term. um, Whoever's running the canteen, the catering manager, looking at menus and what's on offer, and not only what we're serving, but how we're presenting that to young people so that they might understand the climate impacts of what they're choosing. We'd also want a kind of curriculum angle on this, so the sustainability lead, someone who can think about how this is being woven into what's being taught.
Mhm.
Um, you mentioned the senior leader, a governor, and the site manager. I mean, that's a big one as well.
Mm.
Who knows how to adjust the settings on the heating and the thermostat,
Yeah.
or who
Yeah.
knows the building and the grounds.
Mm.
So when we go in and we work with a school intensively, we'll try and have a conversation with all of those stakeholders, and use that to inform what recommendations we might give to a school. But if you can get those people around a table, even for 30 minutes or so, which I know is tricky in schools,
Mm.
talking and beginning this conversation, that's a really good first step that people can take.
Yeah. And so, you've got this group of climate action advisors across the country. Do you want to talk a bit more about how those people are then, kind of activating these meetings and climate action plans? Yeah.
Yes, please. So yeah, there's 32 of these climate action advisors. They're fantastic. Range of backgrounds, some ex-teachers, some ex kind of energy experts. And what they're there to provide is free support to any school, nursery or college who wants it. And they will, in some cases, go and visit a school site and be the catalyst for that conversation. Sometimes you need that external program or project to come in and kind of shine a light on this, and that's what we'll do. And what we'll do is we'll then dialogue and meet with you in a way that can create or co-create a climate action plan for your setting. It very much is on the school to make sure they own it. So we can't do it for them,
Mm.
but we will support and guide as best as we can. Um, we also obviously work with schools in a more kind of less intensive way, just through a kind of a Teams chat like this or a Zoom
Mm.
call. We've got resources. We run a variety of webinars throughout the year and competitions.
Mhm.
So there is other lighter touch engagements we're very keen to pursue as well.
Um, okay. I guess we've kind of covered all the bases with the climate action plans and been quite in detail there. I guess
Yeah.
maybe where to take this next is to think, okay, what might be a first step for a teacher? So let's say there's someone who at the moment has not had any contact with Let's Say Zero, so they haven't signed up to the campaign, but they equally haven't reached out for a climate action plan. Like, what's a good first step for them?
Well, I mean, please do those two things straight off the bat. I mean, please do reach out because that's what we're here to do to help you with. And please do sign up to the campaign. Of course, there's lots you can get going on your own. One thing we recommend a lot of schools to do at the first stage is to try and do a carbon footprinting exercise of their school, which can be really informative. Um, it kind of has multiple benefits. We recommend a tool called Count Your Carbon, which has been designed specifically for education settings. You have to find a bit of background data, but what it will do is it will then turn that data into a school carbon footprint and break down the different categories for you so you can see where your emission sources are coming from. So it will tell you how much of your carbon is coming from your transport, how much is coming from your food, your energy. And it can be a really good first step in seeing, well, where might we want to take action first in terms of prioritizing a different area. What it also does is it starts the conversation. It starts people thinking about this. It starts people having to talk to other people to find out this data. So that's a really important first step, actually, which I think I've alluded to earlier. So that will be one thing people can do. The other thing people can do is just have a look at what other schools in the local area are doing and network in that respect. If you're part of a multi-academy trust, you might have a sustainability leader at trust level that you can contact. You might have schools in your local area who are already doing this that you can reach out to and ask, what have you done and what success have you had? And
Mm,
that can be a nice first step. Getting your staff around a table to talk about this in a teach me or a CPD session. A lot of staff are unaware of the carbon literacy element that's kind of needed as a precursor to a lot of this.
mm,
It's people need to know the why. Why are we
mm,
doing this? And so you can do that in your school. You can present for 15 minutes on some of the basics of climate change if you're confident with that kind of type of delivery. And that can be really empowering for people to know, well, what is it? Why are we doing this? So that's one other thing you can do. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways to get started. I mean, the other thing you can do, of course, is see what's already happening in your school because there will be lots already happening.
mm,
You'll probably have a uniform exchange, which is fantastic. You'll probably have a kind of eco club or eco group that you've just mentioned who are doing things already, and that's a good place to start. Let's celebrate what's already happening,
mm,
and then let's build on that. And the last thing from me is publicize what you're doing on your website or in your newsletter. Make sure the parent community are aware of that this is something you're wanting to work on. You might have parents who are really passionate about this, who can lend support or expertise. So there's a whole variety of things you can do to get started, and that would all be, yeah, helpful.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much. This sounds really good. We'll make sure that the links that we kind of referenced will include, and I guess so. There's webinars, but there's also lots of in-person events that Let's Go Zero are involved with. There's kind of regional, and again, lots of these climate action advisors are involved. So that's something else people can look out for. Um,
Yeah, I mean, and just to say, I've been fortunate in this role to have gone on quite a few school visits with the climate action advisors and on my own, and it's been really heartening to see the desire from settings to take action. When you involve the young people as well, they're really their voices are really strong on this. That they get such benefit from nature and being outdoors. They already you've already got a kind of an audience there that are ready to go. So it is really a lovely thing to do in a school setting. I actually visited my old primary school last week as well, which was really nice to go back and see what they were doing. And they were doing loads already, and it was just about kind of like what can we do next to be more ambitious?
mm,
Articulating the arguments in terms of course, this is about the environment and climate change. We know that that is crucially important to the future. But this is also about other things. This is about healthier food choices in the canteen. It's
mm,
about more active travel and healthier young people. So the co-benefits of this is really vast. And I think, sometimes if the climate angle, for whatever reason, isn't landing in your school
mm.
setting, pull on those other levers, find out what does matter to your community. And the climate action plan can be a way of addressing those concerns and issues as well. So that's another thing to consider.
Yeah, I think we found a similar sort of experience where people pigeonhole this as an environmental aspect, and they're very quite narrow in that focus. And a lot of this is about opening up so that they understand a lot of these other social aspects and things that they might not link together are actually part of this. And I guess one other thing that we should sort of mention as well is there is so much support available from yourselves, partly as a sort of linchpin of loads of other organisations. But what's so important is that schools are kind of open and receptive to this. And so much of what we're asking, across all of the organisations in this space is to say, please, we're here to help and we just want to kind of help you. And I know that that can be problematic because, a lot of schools and teachers, their capacity to be able to kind of accept that is really limited. But yeah, that's
Yeah,
another.
no, definitely, 100%. There's some fantastic organisations out there doing great work. Yourselves, the Eco Schools, the Climate Ambassadors
Mm.
Project as well, run by the DfE, has got some great people that can come in and help that I'd really recommend you contact as well. The National Education Nature Park. There's the Sustainability Support. I could go on and on
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because I can't name them all. But
Okay.
you're right, Paul. There's loads of support out there. So yeah, reach out and see what people can help you with.
So, Alex, there was research recently that shows that actually only about 20% of schools have got a sustainability lead. And you've used the word already that this isn't mandatory. Kind of, can you talk a bit more around that, kind of what the expectation is and the direction of where the Department for Education is going in terms of sustainability?
Yes, so you're right. This isn't currently mandatory, but things are certainly moving in that direction. The Sustainability and Climate Change Strategy, which was published in 2022, is being refreshed and relaunched next month, I believe. So expect to see some clearer guidance on the expectations around sustainability leads and climate action plans in that. The other place where this comes in actually from DfE policy is in the Good Estate Management for Schools guidance, the GEMS guidance. And within that, there is now a section on climate action plans being part of what would be considered a well-managed sustainable estate. So it's also coming in that way as well.
Mm,
Um, we hear often from schools the difficulty in giving time to this in terms of an allocated role. Um, but where they are able to do that, the benefits of that role are so clear to us when we go and visit the school in terms of the impact that that person has been able to have. And just the way in which it shifts the culture towards a better focus on this. Um, so yeah, just one last thing on that as well, actually, is for one of the schools we were working with recently, they were inspected by Ofsted.
mm,
Now, I'm not proposing that this is something that should be inspected by Ofsted. That's the last thing we want to do for
mm,
schools to have another thing. But what was really nice was that they recognised the work in the climate action plan as a real positive of the school, and it helped them towards an outstanding judgment in that category in Ofsted. So what we would ask for is that this is recognised as a positive thing that schools are doing rather than penalised if they're not, if that
mm.
makes sense.
Yeah.
And so all of that is a really helpful indication that this is the way things are moving.
Yeah, and I guess it's about a culture in that you're saying, if you're engaging in this wider discussion and debate and almost this sense of kind of care for planet and people and all these sorts of things, it sets a tone that then has co-benefits that you've sort of talked about. Um,
And also there's schools are often really good at having a set of values.
mm,
And when you look at those values and you think about the work that this entails, there's so much partnership between them. It's about stewardship, care. It's about looking after things. All of those things are really intrinsic to what climate action is. And so if you can, as a school, maybe look at your set of values and think about that, that can help frame some of this as well.
mm. And I think then just the other thing maybe to mention as well is that a lot of people think, okay, it needs to be dictated from government, and if I needed to do anything, the government would be telling me exactly how to do this. And maybe some people are sitting on the fence, thinking, okay, it's not quite that sort of strong enough. I'm not being held. It's not mandatory. It's not statutory for me to have to do this. And I think there's a discussion then to think in terms of like, sort of. Yeah, like you say, values, but the kind of moral imperative of this as well, and that sense of like, in terms of responding to the climate and nature crisis, each and every one of us within our settings needs to do as much as we can. It's not something that we can just leave for government. And I think that's something around net zero in particular. People don't necessarily understand. In order to achieve net zero, businesses, schools, individuals all need to do their part to achieve those sorts of government goals. And I think that's where also this sits, is that sense of, as a community, there's an expectation that we feed into our, reaching net zero.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And one of the reason we focused on schools as our campaign is because, of course, what happens in the schools is really significant. About 37% of public sector emissions come from schools, but the lessons learned in that school would ripple out into the community,
Mm,
into households, into local businesses. And so, the potential for change to happen from the school as the center point of that is massive. So that's why they're so important. But yeah, you are right. And the other thing I would say is, of course, is that we're encountering more and more young people with eco-anxiety, concerns about the future health of our planet. And research shows that the best antidote to anxiety is action.
mm.
So in terms of safeguarding young people, you know, taking action in your school setting is a really positive step. And that's another reason to do it as if there
Yeah.
isn't already enough.
Yeah. I guess the other thing that we should maybe just mention as well is like what's the aims and the goals of the Let's Go Zero campaign at the moment. I mean, again, talking about numbers is kind of a silly game, but equally, what is it that the plan is? Is the plan that every school needs to get a climate action plan, and that's what the goal is, or what's the aim for this year?
Yeah, great question. I should know this, shouldn't I? The aim for this year is to just full steam ahead towards helping as many settings as we can. We're trying to scale what we do by working with more than one school at once because we recognize we haven't got the resource to reach out to every school individually and work that way, albeit we are still doing that in some cases. We want to get to 8,000 sign-ups for the campaign by the end of the year. We're about 300 shy of that. So that's something we're really looking to do because that would be a third of schools in
Mhm.
England. And we see that as a kind of tipping point almost of kind of demonstrating that this is now really mainstream and not kind of a minority.
Mm,
But yeah, I mean, one thing we're really trying to do and is really try and start to look at, well, what is the carbon impact of what we're doing?
mm.
This is quite fledgling work, but this is something we're really passionate about being able to show. And so that's really what we're going to be focusing on next year through this project.
That's quite tangible as well, isn't it? To say if a school does this, and we've got an example which then had this impact, and then you can start to almost scale it to say like if we had this number of schools doing that same thing, it would then reach this. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly so. And
Mm,
we are involved in the delivery of some of the GB Energy solar partnership work as well, which is giving some really robust data around what is possible for schools when you've got a behavior change campaign happening on the ground, but
mm,
also that retrofit infrastructural upgrades happening as well. And the numbers coming out of that are really positive. So all of that we hope can really show government and policymakers that this is really proven in terms of what can be achieved.
mm. There's
Yeah,
there's that statistic that gets thrown around schools' energy use. Is it the what's is it 60% is used outside of the school hours?
I think that's it. Yeah,
Yeah.
half to 60% is when the school is yeah closed
Mm,
technically. So yeah, the savings to be had there are potentially massive.
yeah.
So yeah, yeah, that's the one.
But it's when you hear things like that, you just think, well, this makes so much sense. Like, why is it that schools haven't operated in this way in the past? But
I don't know. I mean, it's a great question. I think energy prices obviously have changing in that
mm,
recent years has really kind of brought this sharpened the focus on
yeah,
this.
yeah,
But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, if it was your own home, you'd be doing something about it, wouldn't you? So
yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
yeah,
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Alex.
you're welcome.